to page 30. So let's say a person has clothing, but it's very dusty, right? For example, the hat, right? Black hat. You want to brush the black hat on Shabbat. You want to brush your jacket on Shabbat. So 33, strictly speaking, according to Sephardic custom, one may brush off dust from one's garment, even if your garment is black and new. One may even brush it with a brush. However, preferably, one should only remove dust from one's garment in an indirect manner, using your sleeve instead of using a brush. But technically, you could use even a brush. So, let's say you have a shlappa, the black hat for the yeshiva boys wear. Technically, you're allowed to use a brush to brush the hat on Shabbat. Or let's say you have your coat, your black coat that you wear, a long coat to go to shul, and to wear when the winter. You can brush it off if it's dusty, even with a brush. 35. Let's say clothing got dirty with some dry food or other dry substance. Let's say you have some dried cholent stuck on your clothing. It got dried up already. So you want to scratch it off without wetting it. It's permitted. You're allowed to do that. Mud. 36. Mud can be removed from one's clothing in the following circumstance. A. If the mud is still wet, one may grab the area of the garment from inside and rub the outside against itself. And then one may use his nail to scratch it even from the outside, right? So if it's wet, you can still scratch it off. B, if the mud is dried up, you may rub it off by grabbing the inside of the clothing and rubbing it against itself, only if one is embarrassed to go outside with such a stain. Preferably, if you have no other clothing, you should ask a non-Jew to take off the mud, because it's going to be potentially grinding when you scratch it off and you're crushing the mud into little pieces. So therefore, if it's wet, you can scratch it up, but if it's dry, preferably not. 37. It is rabbinically prohibited to hang wet clothing to dry on Shabbat. However, if one hung out clothing before Shabbat, one does not have to take them down on Shabbat. So let's say a person got soaked in the rain, he should not hang up his clothing to dry in a place specifically for that. A person could put it on a chair that he usually puts it on, but he cannot put it up to hang dry somewhere specific. 38. One may not hang up wet clothing, even in a place where other people cannot see the clothing. The reason why they forbade this is because people are going to think you did laundry on Shabbat. So what if I hang the laundry in a place where nobody will see? Still, it's asur even in rooms within rooms. 39. One may hang dry clothing even in the regular place where one would hang wet clothing to dry. However, one should not hang the clothing in a different way than he usually does. Let's say the shirt is dry. It's not wet. But I want to hang it in a place where I usually hang the clothing. It's mutar. 40. If one accidentally hung clothing to dry on Shabbat, he does not have to take them down. He may wear them even after they dried on Shabbat. However, if one hung up the clothing and knowing it was forbidden to do so, the clothing may not be used on Shabbat after they dry, but may be used after Shabbat. Back in the day, they didn't have diapers. What they used to use? They used to use cloth. You had to wash the cloth. 41. Cloth diapers that became dirty because of urine may not be hung to dry on Shabbat unless they are visibly soiled. Okay. 42. One may not hang place a wet garment next to a fire or a radiator in order for it to dry. 43. One whose clothing got wet may go outside in the sunlight, even though it's going to dry, because it's not your intention to dry the clothing. Okay, good. 44. If a person's clothing got wet and he needs to get them to dry, he may lay the clothing on a single chair, not next to the fire or radiator, but not spread them out in several chairs, because then it's obvious you're drying the clothing. Okay. Let's do 45. If one suit or clothing got wet, and it's a type of clothing that's only dry cleaning and cannot be cleaned at home, you may hang it up regularly to dry. 46. A washcloth that has been noticeably dirty and is wet may be hung up in its regular place or even outside to dry. Let's say people have this bar next to the cabinets on the kitchen or the oven. The oven usually has a bar. The dishwasher has a bar, and they hang the towel there. It's okay. Since you always keep it there in general, so you're allowed to put it there even though it's going to dry. Let's do menapetz. Combing. Okay, in order for what? A question? No? Okay. In order for it to make the curtains of the coverings of the Mishkan, wool was required. And you need to use the wool, you have to comb the fibers to straighten it out. And that's called menapetz, to comb it out to make it straight. Combing for the purpose of making wool into string is done with a brush or even with the hand. And combing a length of 4 tvachim is when you break the Melacha d'oraita. Menapetz doesn't apply only to wool, it applies to any fibers in which you can make a fabric from it, even synthetic fiber, straw, and similar things. Number one, menapetz does not apply to live hair or fur, because hair or fur attached to a living being cannot be spun into thread. So if you comb with a hair that you attach to your head, so that's gozes, that's shearing, that's a different melacha. Menapetz only applies once it's detached from the animal, detached from the person. It is, however, forbidden to comb one's hair because of gozes, like we spoke last time. Number two, one may comb a wig, right? Because ladies have wigs, so that's already detached from the body, so that's where menapetz potentially could apply. One may comb a wig on Shabbat if the following conditions are met. A, by combing it, you'll not pull out any hairs. B, one could theoretically go outside with the wig, even without combing it, because only a little combing is necessary. And C, one should use a comb that you not use during the week. Okay, but we're going to see another potential issue with hairstyling on Shabbat is gel. Gel and hairspray is not allowed because of boneh, because of building, and it's considered building applies to a person as well. So therefore, gelling the hair and hairspraying the hair to stay in place on Shabbat is prohibited. Okay, we'll continue with Tovea next time. Baruch Me'olam.